Budget day is looming, and the cornerstone of the Chancellor George Osborne's economic policy, Britain's AAA credit rating, has been eroded. We're now AA1 status. The pressure on him from all sides to abandon his deficit reduction programme, his so-called Plan A, has reached maximum levels. Even the IMF's chief economist, Olivier Blanchard, says Osborne needs to take stock and make adjustments to the current plan of aggressive spending cuts. So what are economists, analysts and businesses saying about the job the Chancellor has done so far, and what do they think about what he should be saying in the Commons on Budget Day?
Markets-wise, today we're able to borrow more cheaply than we were when we had the AAA rating last week. That is a message that within the world today, amid hopefully at the tail end of this financial crisis, there are safe havens are few and far between. The US, Germany, Japan, traditional safe havens, the yields on their government debt is so low, the UK is in effect benefiting from being still a safe-ish place to be, still class it as safe, but you're getting a better return on your money for investing there. So that's helping out in that sense. So while the AAA, which was a very prized rating, has been lost, I don't think it's by no means the end of the world. Don't forget the US lost its AAA rating in the middle of 2011. It's still the safe haven of choice.
Losing the rating seems to have been more of an embarrassment for Osborne than anything else.
He drew the line in the sand with the AAA credit rating, perhaps not with the greatest degree of foresight. And he said that outside opinion was absolutely vital for Britain's financial and economic credibility. Let's be honest, it wasn't. The financial markets have long discounted the opinions of the rating agencies simply because they got so many of them wrong in the past. But Mr. Osborne put that out there and he lost it. Now he should pay a political price for that. Right or wrong, that was his decision to make. So he is going to have to somehow get some of that political currency back. And what's the best way for him to do it in austerity Britain? Is it to cut corporate tax rates, or is it to offer maybe some tax incentive to those at the lower end of the income scale?
Using a tried and tested investment boosting tactic could be a model for future growth.
He needs to try and get some confidence into the economy. I mean, to be fair to him, he was left with quite a mess from the Labour Party. The Labour Party were running a 3% budget deficit at the top of the economic cycle. Anybody who knows anything about economics will tell you that's a real no-no. However, to get the economy moving again and get some growth, he probably needs to install some kind of policies such as he's installed in the North Sea. Last year he reduced some taxes on investment, taxes on income, more capital allowances. That has, so far it seems, provided a big boost to North Sea investment. That should start providing some revenue for the government next year. If that's a success, then you should look at that type of policy, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses.
The capital allowance increase is good news for organisations like the FSB, which has over 200,000 members. But they say many SMEs continue to struggle.
One of the key areas that George Osborne needs to look at in terms of small businesses is access to finance. It is so important for small businesses to get the money that they need to grow and to create the jobs. He needs to give more information about the business bank. He needs to make sure the funding for lending scheme is working, and he needs to make a market that is more competitive. If you think about it, small businesses really only have 4 major banks to go to, and we need more competition. So whether that's peer-to-peer lending, whether that's VCs, whether it's initiatives like funding circles, so small businesses need more options in order to get that cash.
When business owner Kim wanted to start her current venture 2.5 years ago, she had an exasperating experience with one of the big banks.
I went to the bank, I had money in my current account, and they said, I'm sorry, we couldn't give you a business account. And I said, but I don't want to borrow any money, I just want a business account, therefore, because it makes you look more professional, you can pay money in, have maybe a checkbook, which they categorically said no. I had somebody, it was Barclays actually, I even wrote to Bob Diamond about it. I wrote a 2-page letter to Bob Diamond.
Did he ever reply?
No, he never. No, he never. I still do bank with Barclays, I don't know why, I must be mad. There are hundreds, thousands of people like me in the UK really working hard, really trying, set up a new business in a recession. And I have to say now, after 2 years, it's starting to go places. Well, go places, I'm starting to get there. But with no help from anybody, only family and friends helping me out when I've needed money lent to me. Because nobody will listen, I've got nowhere to turn to.
But the FSB believes George Osborne will do the right thing by Kim and others like her.
Small businesses are a huge importance to our economy. They create so many jobs. There are over 4 million small businesses in the UK and they are vital for the growth of our nation. And we hope that the Chancellor will continue the momentum and create that growth that we so desperately need.
So where is Britain now in terms of economic output and growth?
Well, in 2012, I think there had been a lot of volatility in certainly the GDP growth data. We had, out of the 5 quarters, 4 quarters of contraction. So that was pretty disappointing, even if you put aside some of the things like the Jubilee, extra bank holiday, and then the subsequent bounce from the Olympics. Looking through all the volatility, however, I think the underlying growth in manufacturing and services is slightly positive, which is good, but we don't think is really good enough. What we've had is really still a failure to rebalance the UK economy away from services towards manufacturing.
Making headway is proving such a tough call, and the upcoming budget is potentially going to show that little ground has been made. We've had the Q4 GDP just confirmed as being tepid at best, and while there is always the possibility of upwards revisions, we're by far out of the crisis, showing the growth that we need to make real progress on an international scale.
So how else can that vital growth be stimulated?
There's a £700 billion worth of cash sitting on company balance sheets at the moment. That's doing nothing. And if you get that into the economy, or at least some of it, that'll have a twofold effect. One, it will boost growth, should well provide jobs as well. On top of that, due to the savings equilibrium within the economy, that will also mean he won't have to spend as much as well.
HSBC Bank routinely examines trade data. They believe businesses ought to be mindful of over-reliance on European trade.
Aside from the sort of internal rebalancing between services and manufacturing sectors, there's the external side. The UK exports relatively little to the faster growing economies in the world. We have very high exposure to the euro area. Unfortunately, that means we are exporting over 50% of trade and services to the euro area, which is probably going to fall into recession. So the external balancing story is also something that we do a lot of work on, and we need to see, I think, the UK exporting more certainly to Asia as well as Latin America.
Everybody wants to be exporting to the emerging markets, to the Brazils, the Russias, the Indias, the Chinas, the BRICS of the world. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing everybody's currency fall in international markets, because they would like to see their exports ever more attractive to foreign buyers. But that is what they call the beggar thy neighbor game. In other words, everyone's trying to race to the bottom in order to get an export edge. And that's extraordinarily difficult, and it takes an extraordinary amount of time. Canada, for instance, is one of the largest exporters of natural resources anywhere in the world, and it has been very difficult for them to increase their exports to the emerging markets, particularly to China. And Canada's exports are wanted by everybody in the world, and they still have a difficult time ramping it up.
Can Osborne boost consumer and business confidence in this next budget? To some, he's on shaky ground.
I mean, nothing's really happening with the economy, and he can't keep blaming the past government the whole time, because they have been gone now quite some time. The more he sort of taxes people in different ways, the less money they have to spend, therefore the economy will not grow. So he needs to wise up and get real. He doesn't know anything about real people, let's face it.
At the end of the day, the UK economy is still some 3% below its pre-crisis level. So we're still in a very slow recovery, even though underlying growth is still slightly positive. So we think it'll be a long road back to recovery.
I think Mr. Osborne's timing in terms of coming into the job and the crisis timing he's just been dealt a bad hand. I guess you have to ask yourself, if there was anyone else in that job, would they have fared better? Potentially not. When you're faced with an economy which is itself struggling with the Eurozone when ravaged by austerity, China, fears of China slowing, even the US in trouble, you're always going to have your work cut out for you. So, you know, this next budget is his chance to maybe announce something radical, to really shake things up and show people that he has the power to announce something which really does help the UK economy.
Britain has a long and difficult road ahead with some big bumps around the corner.
His big challenge is going to have to be, it's probably not this year, it's probably in the next couple of years. That's when the big spending cuts come in. At the moment, the majority of the austerity has come from tax increases. That's only a 20% weighting in the entire fiscal austerity plan. So there's still a great deal of spending cuts to come through. Once those spending cuts come through, when you consider the fact that government expenditure added 2.9% to the economy in 2012, if that starts being cut rapidly, you do have to wonder where the growth is going to come from.
Despite the gloom, there's optimism in the air.
George Osborne came to our annual chairman's dinner recently, and he spoke to some of the members, and he gave an absolute categorical promise that this budget would be for small businesses. So I think that there is a lot of expectation surrounding George Osborne about what he's going to say this time around. We hope it's going to be good news for small businesses. I think the autumn statement set out a very good plan, a very good start, but we need to keep that momentum, we need to keep that going.
Pressure, expectation, anticipation, all in equal measure. Make sure you're online with IB Times UK on Budget Day, March 20th, for the very latest reaction from our expert journalists to the Chancellor's speech.